wealth to me, when I consider myself wealthy, is going to be when I'm able to provide, my wants and needs and not have to spend the majority of my time. When it started, people are like, oh, well, what's this? Now I'm hearing like business people who have never, touched code, like talk through building agents and workflows that's helping them save hours on building reports and all these things. What Brian Davis has done, I think people that possess that skill set to that point, you're going to look at early six figures. Any role, that's the value that I believe you have once you can say, hey, I can go into a milk company or, a fast paced startup and I can start helping these people solve problems. And here's the proof. You're going to make six figures. My advice during those times are to, you want to show definitely that you have the technological chops, but be inquisitive. Once again, when you're talking to that person and ask them what they're looking for, like what problem is this position being hired to solve within the business? When you start having those conversations early on, it's hard for somebody to go back to the table and be like, hey, this isn't a person we should, this is a person we should pass up. You really start, it's sales, right? And that's something I've learned from you. Like, how quickly can we get into that conversation to sell value? Got
Welcome to the IT Connect podcast. We're having what we call a tech testimonial today. There's so much to say. I am Kazim Abbott, your host and chaperone for this. I'm a technology professional, a keynote speaker, and also an investor. And the IT Connect podcast is really a movement to help bridge the racial wealth gap. That's why we're here. We want to help people use technology to bridge that racial wealth gap. And when we started this journey several years ago, this brother, today's guest, was someone who reached out to me. We met just before I started this effort. He was part of most of our meetings, if not all of them. And his life transformed, being exposed to the education and also taking action. Nothing happens in life unless we take action. So I'm really excited to bring to you today's guest, Mr. Greg Provo. He's a seasoned systems architect and software engineer, equally at home wrangling AWS services as he's at untangling legacy business code bases. He has a track record of migrating enterprise platforms, building resilient data pipelines, and designing full stack solutions from scratch. Greg turns complexity into clarity. I like that, complexity into clarity. In this tech testimonial, he will be sharing with us today how he carved his own path in web development and how you can build yours too. So first and foremost, Greg, let me just say, man, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really happy to have you on it today. How you doing, brother?
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here. I'm doing well, man. Like you said, we met a while back, and I was thinking about that. I saw the questions. I don't even remember exactly how we started to interact, but been working ever since. So thank you for letting me be here.
That's awesome, Greg. And you know what? I'm happy you said that because I actually, one of my superpowers, Greg, is my wife always reminds me, I have a really good memory. So I'll remember stories from years and years past, and she'll be like, "How do you remember that?" So I do remember how we how we first interacted, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So Greg, I want us to level set. So let's start with this. What is a mantra? I always start the podcast with this question. What is a mantra or a quote that you live by, and maybe a bit of a story that goes with it?
Okay. There's only one, and it's value learning over money and time above all. And I don't even know where I heard it from, how it entered into my brain, but it just makes sense to me. Anything that you do, especially when you start talking about tech, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on learning a lot of different things. And because tech is so lucrative, you can get sidetracked by chasing the money in the beginning, but you should always be learning like in the beginning and putting your like investments into that learning.
Give me that quote one more time, Greg, because I'm trying to stay with you, but give me that quote one more time.
Yeah. Value learning over money and time above all.
Value learning over money. Ooh, and time over all. Okay, I love that. I love that. Man, that's good. That's good. And I think, as you shared, for those in technology, that's a it becomes real when you're
Yes.
in that space. It really does. So Greg, let me pull back the onion a little bit because I remember how we first interacted, and I'll give this story real quick. It was 2020, and I had just decided, okay, I wanted to make the pivot. I had been doing the academic consulting agency for a while, and I thought, you know what, I want to pivot from not just coaching students, but I want to get into speaking engagements, right? I want to start speaking because I feel like I can maximize my reach and impact that way. And Greg, I remember you reached out to me probably a few weeks, maybe after I made that mental decision, right? And you said you were reaching out to me asking about UIS because you were thinking about doing a program
Yeah.
at
Yeah. Yeah.
UIS. So, Greg, can you just kind of tell us, okay, so where were you at in life during that season? Because you were thinking about um, going to UIS, and let me just say this because I'm really big on this. LinkedIn. Greg found me on LinkedIn. So you were thinking about you going to UIS to do, I'm not sure if it was a grad or undergrad program, but can you speak to where your mind was at during that season, Greg, and what you were trying to achieve?
Yeah, it was a graduate program, and kind of where I was at that time with my career is I had kind of gotten my foot in the door. I'm still kind of in the junior stages, so where my mind was is trying to figure out like how do I begin to progress in this career? How do I scale up? What are the things that I need to do to get to the next level? So naturally, one of those things is considering graduate school. UIS had a program in data analytics. I got my bachelor's in data analytics, so it kind of was like a natural progression. Um, but what ended up making me not go that route is just because how quickly things move. And the second part of my mantra, value time above all, you have to make decisions that, while they're solid and safe, that you can move kind of quickly with the pace of technology in the industry. And for me, at least, grad school didn't fit that.
So, Greg, I'm happy you shared that because technology, the rate of change, and I was in organizational change management for most of my tech career, and we call this thing change saturation, which is how much things are changing all at once.
Yes.
And I think you're spot on, Greg. Technology changes fast. And I know we're going to get into the AI talk a little bit later, but being able to make those pivots and being decisive, knowing what you're trying to achieve and whether it's aligned. So I'm happy you call that out. So I think, Greg, a couple of things that you did that really impressed me when we first connected. Again, you were thinking about getting a graduate degree. So you found someone at LinkedIn via LinkedIn who was associated with that institution you were thinking about. So we had a conversation, and let me say this, folks, for those listening, if you want to connect with somebody, think about how you could add that value, right? So we spoke, and very early on, I shared what I was trying to build, what I was trying to do. And Greg mentioned that he had a web development background. So again, I'm wanting to get into speaking, and I learned that a key requirement for speakers is having a website. All of a sudden, a couple of weeks later, someone reaches out to me who has that skill set, how to build websites, and he wants to learn about my experience at an institution. So that's how we initially got connected. And again, Greg, I just give a little bit of kudos to you right now, actually, because long story short, that discussion helped fuel me starting the podcast to begin with. And working with Greg, I got a website built. Aaron, who's actually on the call in the background, Aaron was the one who built the website with Greg's guidance, and that actually helped him get a job. So again, you see how leading with value, seeing how you could add value, just puts you in position to win in life. And Greg, so again, I think that's what you did was really impressive. And again, I'm really thankful. Even the cost structure you proposed for the website, I was
Yeah.
like, what? And then years later, I'm like, man, this guy's a genius. Like, that's what's up.
Save some
So
coins there, huh?
absolutely, man, absolutely. So Greg, again, so you decided, okay, you had not to pursue this graduate degree, and I want to learn more about your college experience, Greg, because you said you have a degree in analytics, bachelor's in analytics. Tell us about kind of how your college journey went.
Yeah, I'm definitely the poster kid for nonlinear education. I started college back in 2009, 2010. That's when I graduated high school. and went for about a year and a half. And it got to the point where what I was doing, like I didn't actively think about what I was going to be doing. I just knew I needed to go to college. I think I was studying something like psychology, and everything's
Mm.
going fine. And I'm just like, dude, what are you actually about to do with this? So as those questions started to peek in, I got older, and you got to start living life. Life started to change. Started working, took some time off, and then when I was in my early 20s, I went back. At that point, school had actually begun to change, college, and the whole idea of having an online degree stopped being so laughable. Because at one time, people honestly didn't, yeah, they didn't honor it, they didn't respect it. So I took that opportunity with SNHU, and I studied data analytics because by that time I'd been turned into tech. It was a kind of like a weird roundabout way. We could talk about it later, but that's what led me there. I knew I needed to get a degree, but I actually had a job for LSU. Like I had gotten into the industry without that. And I think you have a question coming later that's gonna it's gonna let me explain that gap, I guess you could say. I don't know.
No, that's good. And man, so much to unpack here. So let me start here, Greg. Because part of what I do, my company, the Academic Consulting Agency, our whole claim to fame, if you will, is we help students prepare for college and having a debt-free. That's the whole goal. We want that debt-free degree, right? So we're trying to be strategic in how you go to college. Because I've noticed that many students,
Yeah.
again, they just go so many blind spots, so many gaps. So pulling the thread a little bit, was that you when you went for psychology? Was that you just saying, "Oh, I guess I'm gonna go to college," and you just picked a random major, or what is some? Did you do any assessments that helped you pick psychology? I'm curious as to how you started in psychology.
Yeah, no, I did no assessments. I'm from Southern Louisiana. We do education a little differently. We care about sports and things a little more. So I'm not gonna lie, in high school, I didn't focus on academics. I wasn't a bad student. I just wanted to play sports and do those things. But naturally, the next step is you have to go to college. So because I didn't necessarily have a plan, I went in there and like chose my major as I was going through orientation, which is like the worst thing to do, right? So yeah, like having that type of guidance is paramount, I think, early on. I really wish somebody would have set me down and asked me just a few questions about um, what I like to do. Tech isn't something that we learned back in our high school, so I didn't even know the questions to ask.
Got it, got it. And that's you spot it. I want to double click on something you said, which is if students are asked just a few questions, that could just help pull out where their interest lies. And I think my philosophy, Greg, again, years later, having counseled many students on the process also, it's not just about your passion, in my opinion. I think part of it is your curiosity. Like
Yes.
what is something that you could see yourself trying to figure out, and like time doesn't really exist when you're trying to figure out that thing, right? So let's keep going though. So you do psychology, mention a couple of breaks. Talk about how that pivots from again doing no technology in your degree. How did that technology bug kind of get you?
Okay. So, like I said, I kind of stopped the whole psychology path. And at that time, I moved to New Mexico and I started going to the community college out here, Mexico Community
Hmm.
College. And they just have just all kind of programs. Community colleges, I really want people to understand, parents, that it can be, depending on where you're at, it can be a great opportunity for your student to go there and kind of figure out what they wanted to do. While I was still taking like core courses, I did everything from courses in like laser courses, literally where you're learning about lasers and the visible spectrum, to courses in MEMS where you're making these tiny mechanical pieces on these silicone wafers. And I just, did the things that made me curious. A part of the community college, is always going to be some type of workforce type program or opportunity they have. And one of them was a business accelerator. So
Hmm.
I go into this business accelerator and I'm like, yeah, I can be an entrepreneur. I have great ideas, and long story short, I went through that trying to start a 3D printing company. And I actually got to do a pitch at IBM out here,
Wow.
and they tore me to pieces. And some of the feedback was, great idea, but you have zero technical capabilities. Like if anybody gave you money, it would be super risky because you don't know how to do any of these things. So it's going to be hard to lead people. And I took that to heart, and I did what everybody else did at the time. Found a coding boot camp, one
Mm.
online. So they had started going online as well, and that kind of got me down that path of web development and tech.
Wow. So the community college, Greg, I'm sure Aaron probably lit up when you said that. Greg, I can't tell you how many times I talk to parents. Again, back to the consulting business. And that is probably the biggest challenge I have in that business. Getting parents, not the students, parents to understand how valuable community colleges could be. Society has done an amazing job brainwashing us to make us feel like if you go to the community college, you are less than. When in part, it is significantly cheaper. And like you just highlighted, it's a safe space to explore. If you're not
Yes.
quite sure exactly what you want to do, that's a less risky way to explore. And so much hands-on opportunities are available there. So I'm happy to hear that that was a big part of your story. And then the other thing you mentioned was the boot camp. So I think boot camps over the last 5 years, Greg, have really exploded. I feel like they were pretty good back when you did that, but now there's a ton more, and the
Yes.
prices have gone up too. So talk about how you went to make a decision, Greg, on which boot camp you thought was the best investment for you. And if you remember, maybe mention how much it cost.
Yeah. I think the cost offhand was like 5,000, and you can do like a payment plan. Back then, the boot camp, especially the ones online, they were very, very new. So that's around the same time that they also started promising, like, if you don't get a job within X amount of months, it's free. So, and I thought it was crazy back then. I still think it's crazy now. I'll note that. But it kind of like lessened the risk there, right? It felt like it psychologically, I guess. Um, but like for me, I just needed a boot camp that, I can get whatever it was, 18 months, I can get whatever basis for like general engineering and development work. And it had to be online because I had to work in real life. So it had to be something that I couldn't at the time, a lot of boot camps were in person, and they were,
Hmm.
25 hours or more a week that you had to be there. So really, price wasn't a thing too much because I knew I wanted to do it. It was more like the availability of the courses, I guess you could say, which that, like you said, that has changed. The boot camps now are just completely different from what they were at the time that I did one. And I was just thinking like, what, 2017,
Wow.
2017?
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. So, Greg, when it comes to that boot, well, I think you mentioned that you were working at the time, right? So
Yes.
because again, I think let me just kind of paint the picture. You have maybe half or a fraction of a psychology degree,
Yeah.
right? What job were you able to get in the meantime while you're, even to allow you to live a quality of life where you could even invest in the boot camp? What kind of work did you do?
Yeah. So at the time, and this was kind of like foreshadowing me being in the tech. At the time, I started working for Sennheiser out here as a tech. Basically, people would send things. Some of the Sennheiser's audio electronics company. They make
Okay.
everything from mics to soundboards to,
Mm-hmm.
all kind of stuff. So I would just work on the things that customers sent back that were not working.
Okay.
So it was like a lot of soldering and messing with PCBs and things like that. I got into that because growing up, I was the kid that always took my toys apart, and I got, a soldering iron, and I was just playing with things. So I was always a bit of a tinkerer, but for some reason, adolescence and early adulthood, I wasn't able to tie that into a career. So a lot of these experiences is what helped me understand that about myself.
As you were speaking, I couldn't help but think of, when parents have kids who do what you just described, take apart the toys. So parents, don't get mad, get glad, because you might have an engineer in the making just trying to figure figure
Yeah.
things out. So Greg, so you're doing your boot camp, right?
Yes.
Could you walk us through how you went from enrolling in a boot camp to maybe developing those skills and ultimately landing your first quote unquote really tech role in the field?
Yeah. Um, so, there was a 6-month job guarantee. Like I said, I find those to be crazy. From the time that I ended the boot camp, it took me about 15 months to find a position in the industry. And it was with a small marketing company doing WordPress websites. So, at the end of the boot camp, you're supposed to know enough to use technologies like Ruby on Rails to build full stack web applications. Even though WordPress is a little different, the core is still the same. And I didn't go for the big Googles and stuff like that. I tried to compete in the market that you're going to make significantly less, but you're going to begin to gain that experience. That's the whole, choosing to learn over getting money. Because a lot of people in the boot camp, that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to work at Google and the Amazons. Like, why not? You know what I mean?
Oh man, you're just speaking my language right there. Um, so I think $5,000 investment, you get into this boot camp. Just over a year later, you get a job in the field, right? Can you just speak to what kind of salary range were you able to kind of walk into when you got that first job?
Yeah. I think I was somewhere around 40,000. I was in Louisiana at the time. So
Hmm.
full-time web developer at a small marketing agency, you're gonna
Hmm.
earn around 40,000. All those things have changed now. Like this is not even the same, those customers, they're not hiring full-time web developers anymore.
Okay, and I don't know if you want to say that for the AI piece because probably want to get to that. So
Yeah.
I think Greg, the part because when we first started the podcast years ago, I feel like that was a gap I felt I left. I did not really call out the salary expectations, right? Because even when I was in higher education teaching, I never forget I had a student who I asked, how much you think you're going to be making? I think he was a business major, and he was like, I want 70K, and I kind of went, okay, right.
Yeah.
So I
That,
think getting a realistic view on, what if you get that boot camp certification and you acquire those skills, what kind of salary you could expect to make. So you know what, maybe we could go there now. So in 2025, Greg, if someone were to do that similar boot camp today, what would you say they should probably expect to make employment wise starting out?
okay. And this is, I mean, super, super subjective and
Hmm.
kind of sanitized. But I think someone coming into the industry with, just a year of boot camp experience where you got a few projects under your belt,
Hmm.
it's not unrealistic to maybe find a job with a medium-sized company at around 60,000. I don't think that's
Okay.
unrealistic, but like I said, caveat, it's just that level of that entry level job is being tested right now, right? Um, it's a place to where it's good to have physical people because you can pay them less, but the work output, a couple of seniors with the right AI agents
Mm.
can do that work. So it's changing, and I hate to give that answer, but that's kind of where we are. I think we're in the soup, and we won't know exactly what is going to be on the other side.
Greg, you're spot on. I think yeah, we are seeing a lot of changes in the economy and the job market again thanks to AI. So that's a great. I think that's a great call out. And I do want to ask this follow up question. So you had your boot camp, you got your first job. What role did certifications play in your career acceleration from that point?
At that time, because I was, applying to smaller agencies, I think it was just one of those badges to kind of give them a peace of mind. Like, there's no licensing agency for web development. So at that time, at that market, those customers, they see that and they say, okay, well, maybe this guy isn't just loopy. A lot of my interviews, instead of showing previous work at places like I wasn't employed. I showed all of my projects from these things, and me being able to talk through it, I guess, is what gave them confidence. So maybe that, and I'm just saying, maybe the certificate was like, oh, let's try this candidate. But once again, that has even changed. I think the industry is a lot less caring of certificates. I'm not going to say
Mm,
that it's not something that you should do because it all depends on how like you learn. For me, like to go at my own pace. So doing a quick certificate is good. It just meets my learning, but I'm not sure that they hold the same weight anymore, quite honestly.
interesting. So, Greg, it sounds like you're saying in today's day and age, if people are trying to get into the job market, it sounds to me like you're saying probably the most valuable thing is the certifications are good, but what's even more valuable, at least in your experience, is having some projects, tangible projects that you could speak to. So I think some people may ask, for you, how did you go about getting those projects?
So naturally in the boot camp, you do them, they're guided projects. Once I got out of the boot camp, um, and actually got into the field, I used some of my early projects, because you're at this, and this is another like hidden value. When you're at a smaller company, you tend to get to do more of the work, maybe even all of it. So,
Hmm.
my first few assignments there were new builds for new clients. Um, so just getting that hands-on experience, and as I'm going through that, like, no, you don't take their code, but you can take snapshots of things you built and stuff like that, and help to build your portfolio. But then you still have to, because technology is moving so fast, find that 1 hour, 2 hours, a few days a week to just learn about something that makes you curious in tech. And that's where you really start to connect the dots and find your path.
That's a lot of value, Greg. I like everything you just articulated there. For those, especially in this season we're in 2025, of course, we in a market where layoffs are just rampant and insane, and we'll talk about that a bit more later. But I think Greg, it's just so important to understand that number one, and you said this earlier on, being at a smaller company has its advantages because you get to do more of the work. You get to get your hands dirtier than you would at a large, Fortune 50, Fortune 100 company where you're kind of, in more boxed in. So I think that's a great call out. The fact that you get to do more and staying curious, right? Staying curious. The other thing, Greg, that I think, and it's a mistake I have made personally, is where if you have a job today, it is so important to document your impact,
Yes.
quantify your impact,
Yes.
ensure that as you're learning these things, you capture it again. You can't take the code with you because of company regulations. However, get those snippets. And I think more importantly is the business impact of what you're working on.
Yes.
So Greg, I guess maybe let's just go there a little bit. So for you, Greg, as you get those web development skills, you at a smaller company, you're growing, you're learning. What was the evolution of understanding how to support business value? What was that like for you?
Um, at that role, I didn't focus on that. I focused real heavily on like the learning curve of building, production ready systems, even though it's just little websites. I think I started to understand gauging business value once I was hired at LSU. So I
Mm,
transitioned, um, I worked at MLC, this company, for a little bit, and then around 2018, LSU started an initiative with LSU Online, where they wanted to, beef that up. A lot of people didn't even know at the time LSU had online courses. So I was lucky enough to get a web development position there. While there, because even though like LSU is not a startup, because that department was so new,
hmm
um, my initial leaders ran that like a startup. So I didn't only, get to have access to technical meetings. I was in a lot of marketing meetings. I was in a lot of, meetings with department heads and things like that, because I was like the guy that can speak tech. But, just being in those, and it's hard. And once again, really trying to seek these, like, I don't want to give the idea that I planned any of this. You know what I mean? It kind of happened, but because it happened, I know like if you can have access to, projects that get you in the room with other departments, things like that. Like, take those opportunities. You got to focus on tech, but if you're in a small enough company or like a startup and you can, go talk to the marketing people and learn what they do, you got to start understanding that and understanding what they value. And it's going to make you really dangerous as a technological person.
Excellent tips. I think as you was articulating that, Greg, I thought about that's leadership is at its core, leadership, right? So becoming a leader, evolving as a leader, having that just relentless pursuit of curiosity. How could I add more value? So I think I love that. You mentioned LSU, so you eventually got to LSU. Could you break down for us how did you even get that job? Did you apply online? Break down how you got into LSU for that position.
Yeah, it's pretty basic, just applying online. I think I'm not sure it was LinkedIn or Indeed, but I saw that they had a web developer position open. I applied. I think as part of my application, I gave all these links to projects and stuff that I had up at the time. So I think that kind of helped land me the actual interview, because they saw past just the resume and they can actually go to a link and see something there working.
And when it comes to the interview process, I know at some companies, Greg, you tend to have what they call the initial screening calls for tech roles. There tends to be a screening call, like an HR person who 9 times out of 10 rarely knows that much about the role. And then if you could pass that, you go to like an actual team member. Was it similar for you with that experience at LSU?
Yes, it wasn't necessarily an HR person, but it was a gentleman that was in a technological role, but not necessarily a technologist. So that initial conversation, I can tell he kind of asked me questions, if you had, what's those guides, web development for dummies, kind of like one of those rundowns, like, do you know the basics?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like not HR, but definitely somebody that wasn't a hardcore technologist. And my advice during those times are to, you want to show definitely that you have the technological chops, but be inquisitive. Once again, when you're talking to that person, and ask them what they're looking for, like what problem is this position being hired to solve within the business. When you start having those conversations early on, it's hard for somebody to go back to the table and be like, hey, this isn't a person we should, this is a person we should pass up. You really start, it's sales, right? And that's something I've learned from you. Like, how quickly can we get into that conversation to sell value?
Hi guys, Kazim Abbott here. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. I have a huge ask. Would it be impossible for you to just subscribe to the channel or to the podcast on whatever platform you consume it? That would really be helpful to us. If you want to go the extra mile, no pressure. But if you could like this video, leave us a short review on whatever platform you're consuming this content on, that would be a tremendous blessing and will help others find this content. Hopefully, this can be life-changing for you, and this is a way you could easily pay it forward and allow this content to be life-changing for somebody else as well. Thank you so much for your time. I don't take it for granted. Have a wonderful rest of your day and have a blessed week. I appreciate you.
Value. Got to have value.
It's funny you said that from me, because I was just thinking, man, you're giving a master class right here, because that is so important, Greg, and that's where the power lies. When you kind of come in and I think most people think of the interview as, okay, I'm going into it just to be interviewed. You also getting a chance to interview them.
Yes.
And what you just said, being able to show that you're curious, you're trying to connect the dots to maximize the impact and the value. I think you're spot on. And there's a phrase I always tell people: when an interview goes from a transaction to a conversation, you're winning, right?
Yes.
That is kind of the goal you need to go with. How do I go from just this routine transactional thing? This person, because of their job, they're required to schedule, 10 people or 5 people to interview. So they have to do it, right? But what if I could make that encounter so pleasant, it becomes a conversation, and they feel like they're enjoying their work? Double win. So no, this is really good, Greg. Amazing advice. Greg, so we mentioned again, I keep hopping back to this because I really want to position this podcast, and I think we're shifting in our podcast niche, but I
Mhm.
really want this to be something where we're empowering the Black community to increase their livelihood, increase their income, and
Sure.
leveraging technology, especially the tech careers. So, Greg, you mentioned 40K kind of starting out after the boot camp. Um, as you we're not trying to get in your business,
Yeah.
but we just want to give some practical guidance to others. As you scaled up in tech and going to LSU, what kind of salary bump did you see, or if any, was there any kind of growth when you make that pivot?
Yeah, for sure. With my unique situation as the department grew, so did the
Hmm.
opportunities for compensation, and being on the ground floor and really helping implement some of the core technologies helped. But even if you don't have that unique type of situation, as you the like, I I want to put so much emphasis on this idea of when we talk about skill set and owning your, I don't know, I guess a term like your means of productions with your skill set. Quantify the things that you're doing, and that's how you derive your value. So if
Mm,
it's going to be really hard, right? You want to, and I'm both thinking and talking right now. So you want to be able to have an impact wherever you're at. You need to quantify that impact, but you also need to understand that as a technologist, your true value is in delivering solutions to problems,
mm.
right? So whether that is in code, whether that is you set in a meeting and help some of your colleagues on the business side think through one of their processes, understand how to communicate that. And I think people that possess that skill set to that point, you're going to look at early six figures. Any role you take,
Mm.
that's the value that I believe you have once you can say, hey, I can go into a milk company or a fast-paced startup and I can start helping these people solve problems. And here's the proof. uh, you're going to make six figures. Um,
Man, this is
but
so
that's
good. This is so good. This is so good, Greg. Again, this is a masterclass for real. You said this perfectly. It's about being a problem solver, right? And I think so I'm so happy you pulled the thread on that, Greg, because I'm reflecting as you're speaking, and I was a math major in college, and I wanted to do engineering, and I say my story for another episode, but the school I got into didn't have engineering, so I went the math route. But ultimately, it's because I love solving problems, and as I matriculated, I realized, okay, I love solving problems that are more people related, not just me and the paper, right? So I think, Greg, the gap I think I personally struggle with is being able to have the proof of
Mhm.
your ability to solve these problems and telling that story of showing you've effectively solved problems in the past. Okay, so you're pretty much saying that itself is a six-figure skill set. I think what I think I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there people would like to say different, but I believe that person is, especially now, we haven't gotten to the AI, but you know being able to not only be a subject matter expert but have skills in I think that makes you a six-figure employee. um,
Wow, wow.
a lot of companies right now, larger companies, have adopted their own flavors, but as that trickles down, like, I think people jobs are going to be lost, but jobs are going to change to where people have to be, you know uh, learn how to communicate their intent to solve problems using AI. Does that make any sense? It's
Man, it
it's a
does, man.
weird
It
hybrid.
does.
Yeah.
It does, Greg. And you know what? Again, seeing the impact of, again, we're gonna spend a little more time on this, hopefully the next 10 minutes or so. But seeing that companies are cutting like crazy
Yes.
to save money, right? And also because they're thinking with AI, they can leverage people to get more done. So AI is the ultimate productivity productivity enhancer, if you want to call it that. So
Yes.
I think, no, it does. I think I do agree that, yes, if you're a professional in the technology space, AI has to be an extremely pivotal part of your development plan or your growth plan. Like you have to be, and I heard something today from Alex Hormozy, so powerful.
Mhm.
He said, you don't need to learn more, you need to do more. So I think
Yes.
some of us, we get
Yes.
caught up in the paralysis of the analysis. So we read the books. And don't get me wrong, I'm all about reading books. I think that helps you a ton. So I believe we should be reading books. However, the caveat is this. If you read all these books and you do nothing, you
Yeah.
take no action, all you get is some intellectual activity. You must eventually take action, put into practice, and try things. Like you wouldn't build your first trying to build your first AI agent. The first one probably sucked, right? It
Definitely.
probably sucked. But it's about reiterating, trying over and over again, going through the iterative process. And so all right, I want to get to the AI stuff. Let me just close the loop on a few other things. But Greg, this is a lot of value so far, man. Thank you so much. I'm learning a lot as you're sharing this, and I'm sure the audience will too. So, Greg, I'm gonna take a step back. So again, at this point in the timeline, you're at LSU, web
Mhm.
developer. Was that the same time? I want to make sure I paint the right picture. While you were at LSU, that was the same time when we connected back in like 2020. Is that correct?
Correct.
Got it. Okay. So, Greg, when you reached out in 2020, again, you were thinking about going to grad school. So, we started this podcast. I want to understand so again, we started this podcast where we brought in, and I'll give some more backstory. We started this podcast, everyone, during after the George Floyd situation. My heart was heavy, and I pulled in a few of my mentees in Springfield, Illinois, just to be like, hey guys, let's check in. Let's check as men, as brothers. Let's just check in. That's literally how the podcast was birthed. And in talking to the brothers, I realized that most of them were trying to find jobs in tech. So at the time, I had a tech job, so did Greg, but everybody else did not. And I was like, you know what? I know some tech people. Let me just bring in some SMEs, subject matter experts, and let's have that discussion on, what are the best practices. And as we had these interviews, I mean, I learned a ton. Greg, I think you learned a ton as well. So
For
that's how
sure.
the podcast was birthed, right? So, Greg, I want to just ask Greg, what would you say was the most value you got from that podcast? I know it's 5 years ago, but what was the what was the value you got from the podcast? And maybe share how you put it into practice.
Yeah. I think the most value I got was just normal, like hearing other people validating my experience and making it more
Mm,
normal.
mm,
Like I
mm,
said,
mm, mm.
coming from Southern Louisiana, nobody in my family did tech. So as I went down this road, I didn't have people to really lean on close. So finding your group and hearing people's story and being like, oh, well, it changed expectations. I think one of the hardest thing for people when they want to move to tech is the idealization of people in the field and what you have to be. It creates a lot of what they call imposter syndrome, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. When you can find a group of people that are around where you're at, not too far, and you can see real life examples, I mean, it does wonders for your psyche. That's a whole nother part of this that I don't think a lot of people talk about. Is the psychological, part of it. So finding a tribe with people that you can share not only your struggles but your successes with, it's just like I can't put a value on that.
Powerful, powerful. I think, Greg, when you mentioned just that shared experience, and you're right. I used to tell people your your tribe determines your vibe. Like when,
Yeah.
when you put those two together, you kind of find your tribe, your vibe goes to a whole different level. So I'm
Yes.
happy to hear you got that value from the podcast. Is there a speaker you recall that we brought in, or an episode that you thought was extremely impactful?
I think, and forgive me if I pronounce his name wrong, Tajish.
Yes,
The
Tajish,
episode
your
about
Salesforce guy. Yes,
entrepreneurship.
yeah.
Yeah, I think so many things that he talked about there. It's just adding to that this onion that we talk about, I guess you can say. once you get in your career, there's that whole idea of I have this skill set. Like, how do I how do I scale this? How do I
Mhm.
get closer to owning the things I produce? And I think that for long terms for technologists, you got to think about your like entrepreneurial spur. You have to do it. Right now, AI
Yeah,
is just giving us so much opportunity to create at such a small cost. So like go for it.
completely agree. And I'll make a quick confession here. AI for me, because again, I recorded a podcast years ago, and I just struggled to get it out. And part of it was just knowing I have to sit for hours to do video
Yes.
editing, right? And all of a sudden, these AI tools start popping up, and what would have taken me hours to do on my own, I kid you not, seconds or minutes. I mean, just think about that, from hours to minutes, in some cases, seconds for video
Yeah.
editing, right? So I think AI definitely has changed the game, and from I'm definitely thankful for that. Greg, you mentioned the entrepreneurial spirit, and again, I want to kind of go back to that timeline. So again, it's 2020-ish to 2021. You've gotten this new knowledge from these podcast people, and you make some additional power moves career wise. Talk about those next moves you made in career as far as career advancement.
Yeah. So around that same time, I think I started getting into like data engineering and integrations. So I did general web development. I worked with some other core technologies at LSU, but I kind of wanted to start to see um, how these concepts look at scale. So that's when I was like, all right, maybe I need to seek out a bigger company. And I think in what 2022 is when I got with a company called Provi. And basically, I got hired as an integrations engineer, and that means I was just building, so many different flavors, but connections between um, the customers and the data platform to bring in their data. It's in the alcohol and beverage industry. I don't know if I said that, but yeah, building data pipelines and all types of um, data engineering type script things. Um, from that experience, I can tell you thing that I learned is technology at scale is just good architecture in engineering in the beginning. It looks no different. Like
Hmm.
a well architected system can scale. Like scale is not the question. And I think early on, I didn't
Hmm.
understand that until I really saw it in a larger company. Like if it's architected well in the beginning, when there's not a lot of users, um, you're not going to see the problems that you're going to see over time, if
Hmm.
that makes any sense. And it pushes a lot of my suggestions to early stage when people are doing early stage projects.
Hmm.
Sometimes that initial investment in doing it like right the first time saves you a lot on the back end. Because when you grow organically and you don't really have a plan, it can come to bite you.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good. So I think what I heard you say was good design, good architecture, good engineering up front, even though your user base is smaller. So I guess a smaller user base means less feedback too. You're saying that if you get those things right, as you increase your user base, you'll have less issues in the long run.
Yeah, you'll scale
Okay,
more comfortably.
that makes sense. No, that makes sense. And I think it's what they call it, the carpenter's rule: measure twice, saw once. So I think
Yeah.
that's a good, it's a great call out there. So Greg, again, so okay, so Greg, you joined this other company again. I'm assuming you've grown up, so income has grown up as well, right?
Yes.
So you're crushing it, right? You're crushing it. And I think the another thing I thought about reflecting on the first iteration of the podcast is I focus a lot on getting into tech, but once you're in, the goal should not just be just to stay there at the level you're at. It's about
Right.
how do I scale in tech? And one of the, again, in this market, it might seem challenging, but probably it's not impossible. But one of the things I think people have done who scale in tech successfully, as did Greg, is you make that switch, right? You join a different organization that values the skills that you bring to the table. So, Greg, so you join this other company. Give us the progression. How did it go from there?
Um, it went well. I think because it was a larger company, we kind of touched earlier.
Mm-hmm.
While I did do, a bunch of different things, I only
Mm-hmm.
touched a small portion of the overall architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that in itself was, I'm not going to say limiting, but from my background of, doing things from
Yeah.
inception,
Yeah.
it felt kind of weird having those dark spaces that I really didn't know about. But you kind of like it's boring. It's the same approach. Each next step that you take, once you get in and understand, your basics, you need to start talking to people on other teams. While at Provi, I talked a lot to the people in cybersecurity. I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
that access at LSU, and I just learned more about everything from general cybersecurity practices to how I can use that to become a better engineer, how I can think security first. And that's the same formula. You just reach out to people, say, hey, man, I saw that you do this thing. I'm interested to know. People always love to talk about what they do.
Agreed.
So,
That is true. That
and
is
you
true.
just, yeah, you learn.
That's good, man. And I think that I got a little reminder saying we have 5 minutes left, Greg. So if it kicks us out, we'll just resume because I think everybody wants to hear about the AI, right? So I want to
Yes.
touch on the AI. Just a couple more things. AI. We'll talk layoffs a little bit because that's a big thing right now, and then we'll get into kind of just the financial. Actually, I'll start reverse. So, Greg, as you scale up in tech, right?
Hmm.
Financially, man, I wouldn't talk much about your family, but you could share that you're married, you got some kids. So as you scaled up in tech, Greg, how did that change your family dynamics? As a, how did that impact your finances and family?
Um, having the provisions to do things without stress is really a blessing.
Hmm.
And tech and the type of salaries that comes with being more how do you say skilled, it
Hmm.
it brings you a peace of mind. One thing that I would say when you get in, if you're not doing some type of investing, invest.
Hmm.
Tech is very, very volatile. We were talking about layoffs. I was subject to a layoff. Um, those small investments early on, I didn't want to have to rely on them, but they came in handy. So a lot of times when we get into tech and we get that boost, depending on where we come from economically, there's more money, more decisions of what to do with that. Just make sure you don't only just save, but find some type of safe investment. No, not meme coins and stuff like that, or sports betting. But you know, if you can get the higher salary, kind of keep stable for your lifestyle. Like our lifestyle didn't change a whole bunch. Like we didn't start going to Disney every year. Um, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you're first getting in there, build that nest egg, take that extra and pay yourself first, they say. I don't know if that was a good answer to this question, but
That was a great answer.
yeah.
That was a great answer, Greg. I again, man, I think, Greg, you're giving so much value. And for many Black people getting into tech, many of us are what I call first generation corporate, as you
Yes,
were, right?
yes, for
So
sure.
these are things you don't have people at home having these conversations with you. So when you do get into tech, you get that money and you're able to live at a level that's covering your expenses and there's a gap, right? That gap, yes, I believe in having an emergency fund and savings. However, it's more important to invest.
It is.
In a savings account, 0.01% your bank will give you. If you get into a high yield, you might get maybe 3% or something, 4%, 5% in some cases. However, you invest that money, we're talking sometimes 10%, 15%, 20%, right? So I
Yeah.
think it's important to have that mindset. And the other beautiful nugget you shared, Greg, is that as your income goes up, don't let, they call it lifestyle creep. Some
Yes.
people call it Parkinson's law. As your income goes up, don't bring your expenses and living standards with you right away. Instead, what you want to do is income go up, keep that gap.
Yes.
Because I tell people my philosophy now is save less than you spend, but invest more than you save. So if you break that down, if you're the saving is good, but ultimately it's the investing that will
Yes.
transform your life and put you on a path to building wealth where you're making money in your sleep. So, Greg, I commend you for having that wisdom in that season of life. Because to me, Greg, when we started this podcast, there weren't many other podcasts doing what we were doing. There really weren't, which is why I was sad it took me so long to get it out there. However, a lot of the ones that eventually sprung up, they focused on showing off that lavish, showing the money. Like
Mhm.
if you making a big salary, you have to have the fanciest car or the lavish stuff. When really and truly, wealth in itself is quiet. Wealth is discreet, right? So I love how you called that out and said that's the approach you took. You were making sure you put some money, into that savings and investing so that money could grow. So no, I love it, man. I love it. So at this point, Greg, would you say when it comes to like just the wealth part of the equation, right? What would you say wealth means to you? Like, what do you define wealth as?
Um, I always call it being able to buy my time back. Um,
Ooh,
I'm
that's good. That's
I'm just
good.
going to tell the truth. I'm a dreamer. I like, doing big picture things, but when I'm not doing big picture things, I just want to relax, man. I want to shoot some ball, um, you know, just relax. And wealth to me, when I consider myself wealthy, is going to be when I'm able to provide, my wants and needs and not have to spend the majority of my time making the money to do that, if that makes any sense. That's where the investing comes in and all of those good things. I want to transition to where my time is living these few years that we get granted on this earth and not working real hard. And nothing against that. I think for people like I have colleagues that are corporate raiders, and they go hard, and I respect them.
Mhm.
But I'm from the country, man. I just want to, I just want to relax a little bit.
Bro, that's so good, man. You said wealth to you is buying your time back. One of the biggest myths, Greg, I think we bought into is the phrase time is money. It ain't. Time is we have limited time. It's a
Yep.
finite resource, right? We could always make more money. There's something else we could do to get some more money. We
Yeah.
can't get more time. So I think that's so powerful in itself, Greg. That's no, I love that. So again, I want to see if we could just take 5 minutes to maybe cover the AI piece. We could maybe have you back on in the future to talk about the layoffs and give people advice. I think that's what I want to do, but we could table that for a separate conversation. But let's wrap up with AI, Greg. So Greg, you mentioned that to be that six figure, and again, for many black folks getting into tech, especially, that's kind of man, how do I get to six figures? That's a milestone. And I think it's fine. I think it's good. I think it's a great milestone to have. Um, so Greg, what advice, Greg, would you have for people in technology, again, especially our community? What advice would you have when it comes to AI? And even because some folks probably, maybe they run a few prompts with ChatGPT to generate some fancy images, and that's about it. So, what would your advice be for learning and mastering AI for folks in tech?
Do it.
Hmm.
Do it. As many of your tasks, and I'm not saying at work. Disclaimer: using AI for things at work can get you in a lot of trouble.
Hmm.
But if you guys, for instance, at LSU, I'm back at LSU. If we have like a structured approach to how we use AI and it's all locked down and ITS feels good about it, we don't just, use it on our own. But in your personal life, I mean, as much as you can type into these prompts, even if you just use ChatGPT, do it. If you're doing workouts, start asking it to help you make workouts. If you want to figure out a meal plan for the week, help it ask you. I mean, help ask it to help you make a meal plan. Um, Very quickly, in the time that I got into this industry, I have gone from being a person whose job was to translate business ideas into code, and I've
Hmm.
become a person that uses AI as a tool to do my intent. And it's kind of different. I'm working to solve the problems, not build the solution. And we're all going to move to that. Shout out to my leadership at LSU, Brian Davis. Like I said, we have a structured approach. He brought in a company that allows us to integrate, an AI agent with all of our data, all the things that are important.
Wow.
And he actually rolled that out to the entire department, not just the IT people, but to the business people.
Wow.
And through the structured approach, they're able to work with AI, even if it's just prompting to, build things to make their job easier. They understand their job, but now, and they have like a all hands hour or whatever for people to just come and talk and
Mm-hmm.
ask questions. When it started, people are like, oh, well, what's this? Now I'm hearing like business people who have never, touch code, like talk through building agents and workflows that's helping them save hours on building reports and all these things. What Brian Davis has done at LSU is future proof these people.
Wow.
And I don't think a lot of people even see it. That he's bringing this new blended work environment where we're not totally replaceable because we know how the things should be, but we're using these
Hmm.
tools to maximize our output. And as
Wow.
like being a technologist, you have to like, if you want to do this at all, if you're doing it right now, you need to be the advocate and pioneer wherever you go for this technology, and you have to use it. It's no longer good enough to just do a YouTube course or whatever. Like if that's how you start, fine, but you
Mm-hmm.
need to be using it because once you start to use it, that's when the wheel's spinning. You start realizing its power and you start applying it to other things. And it's here. There's no
Wow.
use fighting it.
Wow. So Greg, I love the approach you shared. So it sounds like you're saying get educated. So find some course or YouTube University. There's a ton of free stuff. LinkedIn Learning for those who have access to that. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn Learning. You find something, so get the knowledge, but then don't just sit on it. Put it into action. Try
Yeah.
it in your personal life. And I think so. Companies like Microsoft in particular, I think because most organizations use Microsoft Office, right? So
Mhm.
the Copilot evolution, I think, will be insane
It
over
is.
the years to come. Because if everybody's already purchasing those Microsoft M365 licenses, then you give them Copilot. I think initially it was kind of expensive, so some people weren't really getting it.
Yeah.
But as the value becomes clear and evident, man, that's one company I think I want to invest. I want to invest some more money in. By the way, just a side note, I feel like they're gonna make a killing in this
Yes.
AI race. But so again, you said, Greg, different things, different problems you have to solve. What it sounds like to me you're saying is leverage AI. Go
Yes.
ahead, personalize your AI tool, whether it's GPT or Gemini or Claude. There's a bunch of them out there. What's the Chinese one? I forgot. Was DeepSeek?
DeepSeek. Yeah.
DeepSeek. So you personalize it and leverage that as a second brain to solve
Yes.
your problem. Man, that's good, Greg. Because as
I
you were
think
saying
about it.
that, go
I
ahead.
think
Yeah.
about it like the perfect example is Iron Man with Jarvis. Like
Hmm.
Iron Man is still like if you're an Avengers fan, I'm an Avengers fan nerd. When he's going in, he's building these suits. He's not thinking through every little piece of that suit. He's coming in with an idea and a problem that he needs to solve, and he's using Jarvis, the tool, to do the heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm.
AI, like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a whole moral conversation about what it means to do that, to use AI to generate code or generate
Mm-hmm.
an email or whatever. I get it. But when we think about that one resource that we talked about, time,
Mm-hmm.
this is a tool that is allowing us to maximize our time. You cannot forego doing that, or you're literally you're wasting it.
I feel convicted, Greg, because you know what? As you were saying this week, It's been a crazy week, man. I've had a few. I think I told you we were planning to record this yesterday,
Yeah.
and my car broke down, man. And I was telling Aaron, I was a little annoyed because I literally had to do some digging and figure out. I plugged in this device to get a code to see what was wrong with my car. Even though I took it to the mechanic, I know what's wrong. In theory, I probably can fix it, but I don't have the tools. But the whole point is, I had multiple problems I'm dealing with this week. What if I could leverage AI? One of those being I'm evaluating getting a new car, so comparing models and trims. So what if I could use AI to help me again, just think through? Because there are certain questions I haven't thought about. My wife asked me today, okay, if you did a lease, what is the penalty for breaking the lease? If you decide you find something else you like before it's done, and I'm like, I already think about that. I mean, I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't do it, but I think about that. But that's where AI comes in to help you see those blind spots. So no, Greg, I think this is some really good value um and suggestions on how to use it. I guess I just as a follow-up for you, what would you say for you personally has been the best value case you found for using AI?
Um, wow. Definitely for work. You know, I'm able to iterate through so many ideas like
Mhm,
quickly, and from an
mhm,
architectural point of view, you want to be able to do
mhm.
that, to look at things from different angles and consult different, configurations, whatever. So definitely that. But I think on a personal note, it's it's honestly helped me articulate my value, um, to not only family but colleagues. Like, the things that I think about, I use it daily to, like you said, go over ideas, think through things, really be an agent to help you communicate better, to help you think about things from multiple angles, whether it's should I consider breaking this lease, or even if you see something on the news and you hear about this bill, if you can get access to that bill, a lot of that stuff is public knowledge, and you put it in AI, hey, explain this to me. I think it helps you become a better citizen. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm I'm an advocate, and if that means I'm, advocating for the world where the machines take over, I don't know, but it helps me just use my time so much more effectively.
Man, that's good, Greg. And it's funny you mentioned the bill. Before you hopped on the call in the pre-call, Aaron and I were talking about the bill. So that's actually, Aaron, a good thing we should do. Kind of just throw that thing into the our AI tools and see what it comes out with. So I think that's great. Greg, man, again, thanks so much for your time today. I do want to have you back in the future, man. I don't want to overwhelm people in one episode,
Yeah.
but you give so much value. I think, Greg, the last part I just want to end with is we spoke about this when we talked about a month ago. Now that you're in your career now, again, you're in a pretty stable place. You've made a decision to not pursue the big flashy tech companies, but something more where there's more stability. And you also have your entrepreneurial vein, So could you just take a few minutes to talk about Mr. Greg Provo, the consultant? Who's your ideal client, and what value do you provide for that ideal client?
Um, my ideal client is going to be someone really early, in the life cycle of a technological project, whether that's building a website for your restaurant, or you're trying to, your school that's trying to integrate, a couple of different tools like Power School and Imagine Learning or something like that. Um, the value that I foresee at this point, that I bring, is working with that client to really, um, determine what problem it is you're trying to solve. I have a bunch of tools we can use and things like that. I think a lot of times technical projects, people get lost in the minutia. It's very
Mm-hmm.
dangerous to talk about all of the what ifs and things like that. I early on help people think about the problem they're trying to solve, and really just make suggestions for the best tools that they can use to solve that. If there's tools already created, if they need to build something, whatever. But that's where I find joy. I love coding, but now that AI can do it, I let the more efficient person do that part, and I work with the people to communicate their intent. Um, and it's great. It's a people's business.
So I could give a quick testimonial here, and I touched on it earlier. But Greg, we brought you in as I was building my website, and again, you were the one who pitched me and said, okay, for Aaron, my mentee, who was again trying to get into tech at the time back in 2020, you said this would be a good learning experience for him. So you were the consultant and coach on the side. Aaron did the implementation. And I must admit, Greg, working with you, the questions you asked, and you pushed to make sure you understood what we're trying to achieve. Once you did, and I have to be honest with myself here, even though I didn't, I'm like, is that really the right way? I trusted your judgment, and in the in the long run, I'm really happy we did. So I think again, your expertise and your knowledge, very well respected. I was really impressed. I was impressed with the guidance you gave, and like I said, it took me some time to see the bigger picture. When I spoke with some other people who are in a similar industry as I am, doing websites for their business in a similar niche, and when I told them what I had going on, everyone looked at me like, "How on earth are you able to do that?" And I'm like, "It's not me. I found a guy." And my guy worked with my other guy, and they were the ones on the back end. So again, I just want to say, Greg, I think for your consulting business, I look forward to seeing it grow, and I look forward to you telling the story because again, you're a problem solver, and I think you could add a lot of value to people. So I'm looking forward. I guess I'm challenging you as well. I'm looking forward to seeing more about your consultancy being put out there online. And of course, I'll be glad to record share more testimonials and encourage other people to consider your services because I'm very much impressed with the value you provided.
Sounds good.
I
appreciate
Hey, you're most welcome, my guy. The last thing I'll say, Greg, is I think that's a great model. You have a strong career, you have this business on the side, then we spoke about investing. Folks, that is my personal, I call it my three key pillars for wealth. If you have a strong career, a business, and you invest, if you do those three things, right, you will become wealthy, right? There's some other prerequisites, but those are the big three. And I'm seeing it in real time with you, Greg, as you're growing. And I'm Aaron, my guy, who I'm also trying to help get into that as well. But if over time they might change in a season, maybe the career is the biggest one. For some people, the business. So I'm in a season right now where my business is the one that's the bigger chunk, right? So it evolves over time. However, you keep doing those three and you keep investing all the way, it's inevitable. It's inevitable. You will become wealthy. So I want to leave our audience with that. Greg, it was a pleasure, man. It was a pleasure. Again, I do want you back. I'm thinking maybe we could collaborate, maybe doing a bit of a how-to on AI. I think
Yeah.
for our listeners, if you guys want that, please comment and ask for it. I will make it happen. Aaron is not shabby as well when it comes to AI. So we could probably do a masterclass on just getting started with AI. For those who have an aptitude for technology and a tech career, here is how I would recommend, just some ideas you could go to work with to get into the AI space. So it would be great to collaborate with you on that in the future, Greg. But this was really good. So I think I'm really thankful for what you're doing. Many things we didn't touch on. We could always do a follow-up. But God's moving in your life, and I'm proud of you, seeing your growth from 2020 to now. And I don't know if you remember this. I was driving from Cincinnati one night, and I think either you called me or I called you. I'm not sure how it happened. But you were kind of saying to me that, man, the stuff works. What we discuss on the podcast, it works. And Greg, you don't know this, but I was having a long week, I think, that week. And bro, you saying that to me just gave me encouragement. And then also, because at that time, I hadn't released any episodes yet. So you give me that word, made me realize, you know what? Let me go back in the archives and listen to those podcasts again. And I'm like, oh my goodness, he is right. So for our listeners, please check out the previous episodes of the podcast. I promise you, these people give some value bombs that are relevant even to this day. So if you're listening, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Music, iTunes, YouTube, whatever platform you listen to. Subscribe, leave us a review. That'd be great. Help us expand our reach. And again, ultimately, our goal is to help more Black people do well financially and reduce the racial wealth gap because it's not in a good place right now. So thanks for your time, everyone. Greg, any last words? Tell us where we could find you online for those who want to learn more about you or connect with you. Just tell us and I could put it in the notes as well.
Yeah, LinkedIn or going to my website. I do free consultations, free chats. If you want to schedule a time there and talk about AI and how you can use it, I'm down for it. Or if you have a project, I'm down for that too. But LinkedIn, I'm always there, and the website is new and ready to be used. So go for it.
That's what's up, man. All right, folks, everyone take care.